Welcome back to Riding with Ree. Today it's just me, Ted is out in the field because we're going to be talking about how to clean your tack. This video is part of a series on equestrian basics, which is perfect for you if you are looking to get a share soon or looking to get your own horse soon, so do check out that playlist. If you enjoyed today's video, do give it a thumbs up, leave me any questions or comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. Ted is my first horse share, so I'm sharing all of my tips and tricks along the way, as well as tips for new owners and new riders. Let's get into the video. Okay, you've got your dirty tack, now let's talk about the equipment you're going to need to clean it. Firstly, you're going to need a bucket that you can put warm water in, you're going to need your tack cleaner, and you're going to need 2 cloths or sponges, one for your water and one for your soap. It's important that you have warm water for this because that's going to help get rid of the dirt and grime that's on your tack. If you don't have a kettle at the yard, bring a flask of hot water with you and mix it with some cold water when you get there. Alright, first step is to pour that hot water into the bucket, mix it with a little bit of cold, but keep it as hot as you can with your hands in it. This is also a great opportunity to make a hot drink for yourself because it makes the tack cleaning more fun, and why not? Next, you're going to take your bucket of hot water and lay a towel down next to it. This is going to protect your bridle because what you're going to do now is take your bridle and move everything out of the way of the bit. So pull your noseband up and keep everything away, and then you're going to put your bit so that it sits in the water. You want to make sure that it's only the metal that sits in the water and none of the leather, so keep all the reins and everything out. But this is just going to let your bit soak in there so that if there's any pieces of hay or anything that have got stuck to your bit, those are going to come undone in the warm water whilst we clean our saddle. So to clean your saddle, you're going to make sure that your numner and anything material is out of the way. If you have a leather girth, hang on to that because you're going to want to clean it. And we're going to do it in this order. We're going to do our saddle, we're going to do our girth, and then we're going to do our stirrups because that is generally the order of how dirty they are. And you want to start with the cleanest thing first. So get your water cloth or your water sponge, dip it in the water, bring it out, and then wring it out. You want this to be wet, but not so wet that the water is dripping off it. You don't need your saddle to get that wet. And then you're just going to rub that cloth all over the saddle. Make sure that it's nice and clean. Make sure that you're rubbing where there's any sweat, particularly you'll find on the girth, you'll see some sweat patches and little sort of bumps of brown sweat. Make sure you really rub to get those off. That's actually why I love these cloths, because they're quite thin and you can get your finger under them and really move them around. So you're going to do under the saddle flaps, and then you're going to switch the saddle over, clean the other side, and then give the underside a wipe as well. And you can see my saddle here, it's wet enough so that you can see the shine, but it's not so wet that it feels and looks like there's puddles of water on it. That's about how wet you want your saddle after you've done it with the water. Then finally, run your girth and your stirrups over with your water cloth. Okay, now our saddle is free from dirt, we're going to add soap to it. So you want to take your soap sponge and make it just a tiny bit wet. If you imagine putting your finger in the bucket and adding that water to your soap sponge, that's how much you need. Not very much, just a tiny bit. And how much soap you need will depend on the saddle soap you're using. Mine is not super greasy and a little bit goes a long way. And then you're going to rub it onto your tack in circular motions, and you'll see that it starts to create a shine. You're going to do the same thing before under the saddle flaps, on all the girth straps, etc. Do both sides of the saddle, and then on the underside give it a quick wipe, and then move on to your girth if you have a leather girth. If you have a material girth, you don't need to do this, but you may need to give it a wash next time you do your numbners, and you should see that your saddle is nice and clean. There is an old wives' tale about some people not soaping their seats because they think it will make them more likely to fall off. I personally don't believe in this, but I do think it's quite funny. So if you don't want to soap your seat, you don't need to. It's completely up to you. And that is your saddle done. It's time to put it away. So if you have any saddle or stirrup covers like Ted does, now is the time to put those on. It's going to help keep your saddle clean. Pop your girth on top of the saddle and then put your cover over the top. Any numbness you keep with it can go on top of your saddle cover. So now that our saddle is clean, we're moving on to our bridle. We are halfway there, guys. I know some people like to do their watering of their saddle and their bridle together and then soaping them together. That's totally fine. I just prefer to do it this way. Also a note that I won't be taking apart my bridle today, but there is a video coming up on that next week, so stay tuned. So take your bit and your bridle out of the bucket, make sure that you give your bit a rinse when it's coming out, and you should find that all of any hay or anything like that comes straight off easily. If you have a martingale or a neck strap or anything like that on with your bridle, I would separate those two. I find it easier to clean them separately. And then you probably will find that your bridle is a little bit more dirty than your saddle. Your saddle sits on top of a numnah when you ride your horse, whereas your bridle is right against your horse's skin. And on martingales in particular, you'll see, as you can see on this close up here, that dirt that sits on top of the martingale. You need to rub quite hard to get that off, and you'll find that the colder your water, the harder it is to get this off. So here it is, there's one that's been cleaned and one that's still dirty. Make sure that you're doing that with all of your bridle, because particularly around his nose and mouth, you're going to find that it can be quite sweaty, especially if you've been doing any fast work. So now that our bridle is clean and free from dirt, we're going to add soap. Same as before, you're going to pop a little bit of water on your soap sponge, not too much, and a little bit of soap depending on how much you need. If you have a thinner cloth available or a thinner sponge, I would use it on your bridle so that you can get into all of the nooks and crannies. And this time you're just going to go up and down, try and move your keepers around so that you make sure that you get the soap on all the areas. Don't put any soap on his bit, obviously that's going in his mouth, you don't want, or her mouth, you don't want it tasting horrible, so keep it away from your bit. But otherwise you want to rub up and down on the inside as well as the outside, everywhere where there is leather. And don't forget to do any extra pieces such as your neck strap and your martingale. And finally, if you do have a neck strap or a martingale, make sure that you put that back together with your bridle so that it's ready to go next time you ride. So that is it. Our tack is clean and ready to go for the week ahead. I hope that you have enjoyed today's video. If you did, do give it a thumbs up. Leave me any questions or comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time. Next week, we're going to be taking apart this bridle, so stay tuned for that.